Alright everybody, welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the electrical and plumbing system in our Promaster van conversion. Alright, so if you didn't see the overview video on our van build, we basically built the van in about a month. We worked every day on it. Be sure to go and check that out. There'll be a link in the description. In this video, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on the plumbing and the electrical system. Okay, so really quick, we're going through some changes. We've had the van for going on 6 to 8 months now, and we've already discovered some things that we don't like that we're changing. So I'll go ahead and start with the toilet. So what we started out with was basically this toilet here. It's kind of a popular toilet that's used. It's a Thetford porta potty. It's got battery powered flush. It's a cassette toilet. And we had it in the shower here. And basically, if you need to take a shower, you had to take it out. Kind of annoying. So we quickly got tired of having to pick up this thing that's full of water and get it out of the shower when we needed to take a shower. But we're very limited to space to have a toilet. Obviously, in a Promaster van conversion, if you're going through this, you understand that. So you can see we've got stuff kind of everywhere right now. It's the winter, and we're kind of reconfiguring how we want to do it. Okay, so obviously instead of this, we're switching it up a little bit. So we previously had the doorway here where it opened up. It was just storage. I'm just kind of got the door set in place here. We're still finishing the hinges. So this is the setup we will have now. So when you open the door, it will open like this, and then the toilet is under here. So the whole thing will pull out like this at night, and then this becomes a step to get in to the bed. You can also just lift the lid and use the toilet if you'd like in this position here. But what makes it even more versatile is the fact that this section pulls out here again like this, slides out. So now the toilet is far enough out into the van that you have enough room on both sides to use it comfortably if necessary. And at night, the step will still be there. You can just slide this right back in. Again, there'll be some carpet on this. And then during the day, the whole thing slides back into this area here like this, and you can close the door. So that is the new toilet setup. Alright, so now on to the plumbing. So I'm going to start with the drain system. So you can see we have kind of just a regular stainless sink that we've bought on Amazon, and there'll be links for the sink and everything in the description that we used in case you want to use the same thing. But long story short, the sink is plumbed into one of these camping style traps to make it easy. You can see that it goes into this braided vinyl line that goes down through the floor. This comes out and goes into our gray water tank on the bottom of the van. The gray water tank is one area where I see a lot of van builds cut corners just by using some generic tank. I know it's a good way to try to save some money, but you usually end up buying a tank that you either can't get emptied all the way or isn't large enough. Gray water tank is only for sink and shower water. Alright, so that brings me to the next part. Kind of hard to see under here. This is our Van Life Outfitters tank. Is about $500, but if you follow the instructions, it's actually really easy to install. The only kind of downside to this tank is that the outlet for the sewage is on this side, and I installed a fitting that'll either take a standard like 3-inch RV hose, or you can put like a garden hose. A lot of places have 3/4 inch line for gray water so you can empty it. It would have been nice if it was on the driver's side, because that's like a standard convention for RVs. But to do that, you know, you have the exhaust and everything on the other side. So I understand why it really can't be that way. You could try to modify it to get over there, but the plumbing gets a little tricky. Okay, so shower drain. We use the kind of a standard shower pan for this type of van build. The problem with the Promaster is where the beams run under the van for the frame, it does not allow a center drain on this side of the van. So you have to get one with a corner drain. We chose to go with a slightly smaller shower. Did use the Nautilus shower door. We went with the smaller shower door so we'd have more space for seating. This is just a 159 wheelbase. It's non-extended. If we had an extended one, might have went with a slightly larger shower. This isn't bad though. It's actually really nice just to even have the shower at all in the van. But the shower drain goes down through the floor and it goes through a HEPFO waste valve, which then goes into our gray water tank. The nice thing about that valve, it does not require a vent. Just like our sink does not require a vent, the tank is vented itself though, so water can fill up and go out of the tank. And this will not allow sewer gas to come back up this way, even though it's on the gray water. It will not. It's a one-way valve for the water to go down, and gas and water cannot come back up. There's no need to have a trap. There's nothing to freeze under the van, so you can use it year-round. Alright, so now on to the plumbing. So I'll just start in the shower because that's where I'm at. But we just use kind of a standard RV style hot and cold faucet. Goes into this really nice shower head. This shower head is great because it has actually three functions. It will run on full, which is just a water saving shower head. Then you can turn the pressure down to about half. And then the third function is it's on a trickle. It does not completely shut it off. And this is actually a good thing because if you're running a water pump and you shut it off completely, it will stop the water pump. And then when you turn the water back on, as you know, when you're trying to conserve water, you'll get wet. Turn the water off, soap up, and then turn the water back on to finish showering off. This one allows the water to keep trickling just enough to kind of keep the water pump moving. That way you don't get that blast of hot or cold water. So the sink, just this part we bought on Amazon here. It's kind of meant for just like a household sink style. Obviously, it's nice because you can swing it outside, use it out there if you need to use it outside, or just have it go straight down into the drain. And I forgot to mention, the gray water tank holds about 26 gallons. So we wanted to have as much gray water capacity basically as we do freshwater capacity. Alright, so on to freshwater supply. So as you can see here, this is our Northwest Conversions 28 gallon freshwater tank. What's nice about this is it fits neatly around the wheel well. Again, it was a little more expensive due to the fact that it's custom made for the Promaster. It's about $350. But it's nice because it tucks very close to the wall. It still allows you to have almost 30 gallons of fresh water. So what I decided to do was, you can see I have a freshwater fill right here for the tank. If we look behind here, you can see it just comes right down into the tank. We've got our vent valve there. This is our shower, outdoor shower hookup. What's really nice this is it is a quick connect, like this. So you have access to water here. I also custom made a pump control module that is activated with either a button here or a button up front. And so if you turn it on up front, you can turn it off here. You turn it on here, turn it off up front. I'll show you a little bit more about how that control works in just a second. But so this is here. All the plumbing was done in PEX It's done in PEX A, which is called expansion PEX. So you can kind of see a lot of it under here. So it uses these expansion fittings. And these are really nice because there was no rush. The water wasn't on right away. These just take, 30 seconds to a minute to close down. I do have individual shutoffs on each branch circuit. You can kind of follow the plumbing around to here. Before I get too much into this, I'll show you the other way we get water. Alright, so we just have a standard RV shore power or shore water connection. You can hook a hose up to if you're at a campground. So this has a one-way valve. So when the system is pressurized using the pump on the inside, water can't come out of here. When we're using this, there's a one-way valve on the pump, so water doesn't go back into the tank, and we can just use the city water just like a regular camper. Okay, so back under here, you can see that the water comes in, it goes up the pipe there, and this is where things kind of split. So I did another video specifically on the water heater that we used, but this is a marine application style water heater. And I originally went with the one that a lot of people use, the Bosch like 5-gallon or 4-gallon unit. The problem with that is there's no way to drain it except to actually pick it up and take it out of the van and turn it upside down and dump it. This marine unit is just a little bit more money, and it's really great because it uses the electric. So if you're connected to shore power or you're running an inverter, driving down the road, you can charge it that way, heat it up that way. Or my favorite feature is that it uses the coolant from the engine. It runs through these lines from the front to heat the water while you're driving. Saves a lot of electricity just by using the wasted heat from the engine. So you can see it's plumbed down through the floor. So we've got our blow off and then our supply and return coolant valve. So the only thing you need to be careful about when using a water heater such as this is that the potential is there that if you just drive and drive and drive and drive, not use any hot water, that your hot water in the tank could get as hot as the coolant, which could be, 210 degrees Fahrenheit. That does present a, scald risk. So you would want to make sure that one of two things. We're adults in this van. We know that the water is hot. So we just make sure to just turn the hot on a little bit if we're using this tank. If you were concerned about that though, they do make mixing valves to go on the front between the hot and the cold supply. That way it always will keep a constant temperature coming out of the tank. So depending on whether you're using the electric supply or the coolant supply, you wouldn't have to worry about getting scalded. I do have the bypass that I installed here. Took a little bit of work with the PEX tools, but you can see how everything is kind of set up. So we come out of the water tank into this water pump. It is a SureFlow unit. You do not want to cut corners when it comes to water pumps. If you buy just the cheap one you find on Amazon, you'll be replacing it very quickly. It goes up, and then that feeds the main supply line. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, like I said, the water pump network that I made real quick. So you can see right here on this little control panel, this is the switch to turn on the water pump, just like the one in the back. They're both momentary switches. This is designed to be, it is a water gauge, but it works like a fuel gauge. So in my tank, I put a float, a magnetic float that rises up and down with the level of the water that corresponds to this gauge. So if you want to check the water level, you just press this button. This will show you the water level in the tank. Again, there'll be links in the description to all of these. This one took a little bit of custom wiring. It's not hard if you're used to like automotive mechanical stuff. As far as the water pump network goes, there's actually a controller that's made for that, and you can buy that controller and it just needs any momentary switch. I did find this one that was made for an RV, so it says water pump on it. You don't have to use this one though, because this is kind of expensive. The momentary switch just sends a signal to Basically, it's just a latching relay that turns on the water pump. So that was kind of an overview of the plumbing and how that works. Now on to the electrical, and this is where it's not really complicated, but it gets a little more interesting. So you can see kind of like the operations center of the van is all over here on this wall. So all the wiring was pre-ran before we insulated and obviously covered the walls. We used, in some places, standard 12 gauge household wiring. You can use stranded marine grade wiring, which may be a better option for on the road, but we did use a combination of both stranded and some solid copper wiring. Some people make a big deal out about not using solid copper just because it would be easier to break due to vibrations if you did a lot of like off-roading. We don't. That's what regular campers use, and they last forever that way. So I didn't really find that to be a concern. All right, so we have a couple different ways to get power. I did a separate video on the solar system that I have on the van. But long story short, we have 400 watts of solar on the roof. This is our 30 amp standard RV looking shore power connection, 120 volt. I started out with a 20 amp connection and it worked, but there was a couple issues. One was with the inverter. Sometimes it didn't like the shore power. It didn't think there was enough power to run the inverter and the charger, so it would start beeping and give me some errors. And also I felt that it was a little undersized because I could actually feel the extension cord getting warm when it was plugged in and I had a lot of stuff running in the van. So I upped it. So I'd recommend, if you're going to have an electric van conversion, kind of like we have here, where you have an electric induction stove, which I'll show you in a minute, and electric water heater and a microwave and a refrigerator, that you do go ahead and opt for the 30 amp in case you are plugged into shore power and you want to be able to use everything at once. Okay, so our shore power comes into this 30 amp main breaker here, and then comes out the top, runs over, and goes directly into the inverter charger. So this is an Ames power. It's 2,000 watts, but it has a surge of almost 4,000 watts. It does have the remote panel. This works really, really well because it has a built-in transfer switch, and it's an automatic transfer switch. So if I plug into shore power, it will automatically switch everything in the van over to shore power and then start charging the batteries right off of this inverter. If I unplug, it will immediately turn on the inverter running on batteries. There will be no disruption to the electronics in the vehicle, and then we'll be running off battery power. So for battery power, I'm running 3 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries. These are made by the Chins brand, kind of similar to other batteries out there. The only thing I will say about them is they do not have a low temperature cutoff, and if you do charge a lithium iron phosphate battery when it's too cold, you can permanently damage the battery. So this Ames power charger does have a little thermal lead that will stop charging when it gets too cold, but as far as solar goes, you have to kind of control that yourself. If the van is warm and you're living in it, it's not an issue. It's just something to remember. So when we winterize the van in the winter, we do take the batteries out. So power comes out, 120 volt power comes out, comes into this panel here. So water heater, kitchen outlets, fridge, roof air, and driver's side outlets. This is more like a panel that you would see in the United Kingdom. It is meant for 120 volts. It works really good in a van because it's small and compact. And the circuit breakers are, these are all 20 amps, and this is a 15 amp one here. And then all the individual circuits come out the bottom and they run to the different areas of the van. So as far as the 12 volt system goes, I built this battery cabinet here, which you can see is empty right now. Again, the van was winterized, so use this nice heavy gauge cable. Comes into the main battery disconnect switch, and then we have our distribution blocks for the positive and the negative. This is our Renogy battery monitoring system. This is the shunt right here. It goes on the negative side, and then back feeding in to charge the batteries, we have Victron Energy, both a 130 MPPT charge controller, and then a 12 volt to 12 volt DC to DC charger, which is a 30 amp to run off of the van batteries. So if you're not familiar with that, if you just connected the alternator directly to your lithium iron batteries, you could actually destroy the alternator. What this does is this takes the charging power from the van's alternator and regulates it to 30 amps and automatically charges the type of batteries that you have. And there is a smartphone app that you connect via Bluetooth to set all the parameters. So while you're driving down the road, you're charging your batteries from the alternator and solar panels. So this is our solar charge controller. Again, this is also 30 amps. So in theory, if you had perfect sun and you're driving, you could be charging your batteries at 60 amps, because these would combine if your batteries were empty enough. So it is a nice setup. I do say that with the solar that we have and the amount of electricity that we've used on a daily basis, running a 110 volt refrigerator off of the inverter, the batteries have been fully charged within a couple of hours of sunrise, as long as there was good sun on a summer day. Everything is circuit breaker protected, both in and out on the solar and the battery to battery 12 volt to 12 volt charger. It's important to do that. That way, not only do these protect for short circuits, but it's also a way to disconnect power if necessary. So we can just shut down the power coming from the van. So if you don't want to tax the alternator while driving down the road, you can just shut off the input that comes from the front of the van. It is also fused up at the battery where we get the power from, to protect the long run through the frame of the van. It does just run down the driver's side from the battery. This is our 12 volt distribution panel here. See, I've broken it up into 6 circuits. One is for the TV, and that's because the TV runs on 12 volts. One is for lights, the fan, which is the roof fan, the water pump, passenger side accessories, and driver's side accessories. I'll show you what those are in just a second. But it all comes through that panel there, and it all runs off of this distribution block here. Alright, so right at the door here, you have an on-off switch. We just did use overhead LED lighting that's on a dimmer. I have 2 more switches here. One is for lighting under the van. So it's really nice at night. I just wired a light under there where if you don't want to blind other people and just want some puddle lighting on the ground, you can kind of make your way to the vehicle. And then there is an overhead light up here. That is the 3rd switch. And I like how that turned out. Everything's easy to access. Do have a GFCI outlet here for when you're either on inverter or shore power. This is how we control the hot water heater and the induction cooktop. So you can see this is a timer. So it says 10, 20, 30, 60. So in order to conserve battery power when running on the inverter, you can just set the water heater to about 30 minutes, which is all it takes to heat up, and it will automatically shut itself off. That way, if you're going down the road, you will conserve battery power. This switch here is to turn on the cooktop stove, which I'll show you in just a second. Just flip that on, and then it supplies power to it. I did put this protection panel over this because I found that we were constantly bumping these getting in and out of the vehicle, and this prevents that from happening. So here is the induction cooktop we used. Went back and forth whether to put a propane stove in here. We always can, but so far this works really good. You do have to have steel or stainless, special stainless induction cookware. But the nice thing about it is it does use a decent amount of electricity, but it cooks very fast and gets warm quick, so therefore you're not wasting electricity. Works very nice. Right here we have more 12 volt and 120 volts, so we have a regular DC plug and 2 USB ports. These are all Blue Sea products, which are like marine products. Again, GFCI outlet. We have 2 more switches. One's for the under cabinet lighting, just 12 volt LED lighting. Then another one turns on an LED, RGB LED strip that is changeable via remote. Up along the top, it's kind of accent lighting for at night. Really nice. See, this is our battery monitoring system, energy system. 300 amp hours. Shows you the percentage of battery, your voltage, and whether you're charging or discharging. This is our inverter right here. See, it's got a display. It works really well. You can either turn it on down there or up here. We just turn it on up here, and it basically just gives you like the load that's on the inverter, which is really handy to know. That way you're not overloading it. All of that, again, had to be pre-wired before the walls were up, as you can see in the pictures that I'm putting on the screen. One thing to note about wiring in the metal frame structure of the van is that anywhere a wire passes through metal, you need something to keep the wire from chafing against the metal, even if it doesn't seem sharp. So I used a combination of the nylon, like corrugated tubing, and rubber grommets, and then also used spray foam insulation around even that to hold the wire very still. That way when you're going over bumps in the road, the wire won't rub and chafe anywhere in the van. And that's the way the wiring is run all throughout the vehicle. I did also pre-wire a cable outlet or antenna, whatever, for the TV. That just runs over into the back near the batteries in case I want to do something in the future. Right now, we don't really watch TV much, but when we do, it's mostly like streaming services. So we have this Vizio smart TV that runs on 120 volts. Again, behind the TV, I also have the 12 volt outlet and more USB ports there. Standard, fantastic type fan. This is the Max Air. We got the regular manually actuated Max Air and not the remote control one because of all the problems with voltage that we found when researching that fan. It does work good. You just have to reach up there and hit the power button, which is not that hard to do. Over here next to the bed, there's this little reading light. It's either white or red, and it does have a USB charger on the side of it. Again, like I said, there'll be links to all this stuff in the description. We did choose to keep the OEM light for the Promaster, and I just pushed the wiring through our finished wall there and hooked it back up. You can disable it just by flipping. There's a switch built into the lens of the light. Normally keep it off, but what's nice is if you have it on when you're coming to the van at night and you use the key fob, you can unlock the van and the lights will come on back here and up front, so you can kind of see what's going on as you're getting inside. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the refrigerator. So it's, like I said, we chose to go with a 120 volt standard smaller household type refrigerator. It is obviously using a regular compressor, and it is actually very energy efficient. We did not choose to go with the 12 volt style fridge because this one really doesn't use much more electricity off of the inverter. So once it gets to temperature, it works very well. It's got separate freezer and fridge. It's actually a pretty well thought out fridge design as far as storage. It is a Hisense brand that we picked up at Lowe's, but I think it fits really nicely into the design. Up here by the window, again, more 12-volt electronics. This time I went with a slightly different look over here, which I almost kind of like better. So you got your 12-volt plug there, USB charging here, 120 volts next to it. It's kind of like the theme throughout the van. Not really electrical, but always smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detector in the back. Over here, this was kind of a last minute addition. Decided it would be nice to have a microwave if we needed it, but I needed something obviously in the van, very, very small, that didn't take up a lot of space. So I found that we were walking through Walmart one day and I saw this one that was on sale for like $35. And so I designed this whole cabinet kind of around the microwave. So you can see this nice little microwave kind of fits perfect with the design of the van. Doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but still would allow you to microwave food if necessary. So if we look under the sink, kind of see the back side of the wiring for the 12 volt and the 120 volts. But like I said, the switches just kind of run over to this outlet here. That's what the cooktop plugs into, is an outlet. So nothing really fancy about that. You kind of see some of the more the PEX plumbing that just runs from the back. One thing to keep in mind, kind of like in a house or any other RV, I wanted to still retain access to the back side of the plumbing. So when we built the camper, we added this little storage area here. But if you look inside, it's hard to see, but that is the back side of the PEX plumbing, runs down through the wall. So if I do ever need to change out the shower valve here, you don't want to build the van so you can't get to something. So I would be able to reach back here and unscrew everything and just pull it off the wall to change it out. Alright, so last but not least is the air conditioner. A lot of people don't put an air conditioner in their van build. This is the Houghton Bel Air 2800. I did kind of a whole video just on this and adding a soft start system to it. The air conditioner was giving me the biggest problem with the inverter at first, but that's all been sorted out now with that shore power connection. We can run the air conditioner off the batteries. It really won't run a long time off the batteries. Obviously, like 6 hours would probably be the maximum, 6 to 8 hours amount of time. But it is good if you need to just turn it on for a few minutes going down the road. Or, obviously when you're on shore power, you can use a generator all you want. Alright, so we do not have a dedicated heating system as of now. As I kind of talked about in the overview video, we've chosen to just use a small plug-in electrical heater. We don't do any really cold weather camping much, so it hasn't been an issue. If it ever does become an issue, I thought about putting in a gasoline powered like a Weebo heater, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it someday. Okay, so I think I've covered mostly everything about the electrical. I know it's not really in depth, but I can't show every step. I just wanted to kind of cover it. If you have any specific questions, be sure to leave them in the comment section and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Again, we got the whole van built and it was just a little over a month. And this was kind of like the hardest part, honestly. For me, it was just planning the systems and how I wanted them to work. And again, like I said, you know, I kind of found out the hard way. I needed more power and had to jump up from 20 amps to 30 amps. That took a little work because it was hard to get the wiring back through to the outside there. I did contain most of the wiring inside of this box that we built that is insulated, and then the wiring goes up into the walls. But it's kind of a neat way to kind of contain a lot of that. Then you just see the wires come out where they need to, as you can see. The one piece of advice I'd probably give when you're doing this is whatever you think you need, go just a little bit bigger, because once you get it in and you realize you don't have enough power you might regret it, and it's much harder to go back after the fact and add more. So with 400 watts of solar, the 30 amp chargers, and the 3 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate batteries, that's been working out really good for us so far, and I don't think we have any regrets as far as that's concerned. Alright, so again, be sure to like the video, subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, as always, and until next time, we'll see you later.